Hey everyone, happy Friday. So this is JR, founder and CEO of Social Market, and this is Leon, CMO of Social Market, and this is the Social Ledger Report.
What we missed last week.
We did. We've been busy.
Chalked it up to coming back from consensus and then Memorial Day long weekend. I'm actually in Mexico, so
Yeah.
uh, I
I love your
wanted to
background,
make
by the
sure
way.
we did this. Oh yeah.
I can only imagine the view from there.
Oh no, it's
Yeah.
great.
So this week, we have a couple of things to go over. We have three stories. We try to condense it so, maybe some of our viewers can follow along with us. But the first thing that we want to talk about is Farcaster. If those of you who don't know, Farcaster, it's like a crypto decentralized form of Twitter. Well, it reached 10,000 pro subscribers, and that made about what 100, maybe 1.2 million dollars in revenue for Farcaster just by doing that, because they had 10,000 subscribers at $120 each. So that's the first story. The second story we want to cover is Sui liquidity pool. This hack happened last Thursday, the 22nd, but there were a couple of updates this week. So we want to go over those for anyone who is affected. And lastly, yesterday was the 29th as of this recording, and that was the Bitcoin conference. So that's pretty big. I think a lot of like the people, a lot of the news that happened because of or correlate to the Bitcoin conference. So want to cover that a little bit more. But before we get into it, just consider subscribing, give us a follow, give us a like, share to your friends. We want to spread the word of what we're doing here at Social Ledger Report. But before we get into it, do you have any other questions or thoughts you want to share, Leon?
No, I want to talk some Farcaster. I want to learn on the other stuff and then cover Bitcoin conference on. Let's jump into the Farcaster.
Yeah, totally. So first things first, our first story today is the Farcaster Pro subscription. So found this on Twitter, like everything. Um, so here it says, if we ask people to subscribe with credit cards, we'd lose $45,000 in fees. We use USDC on base and pay $10. So remember how I said they made over $1.2 million in revenue just from the 10,000 people who subscribe in their platform? All of that was in USDC. And I really wanted to highlight this post because, I mean, why wouldn't you pay in USDC? If you're a Web3 company, if you're a Web3 product, you should be paying in crypto because that's part of the ethos of what you're building. We have some companies releasing products and they still require people to pay with debit and credit cards.
But so the one challenge there that I see though is like, we were talking about this earlier. It's like a FOMO thing. Everybody has a credit card. Everybody has a debit card. USDC is still a little bit. It's not impossible to get, and it's actually getting easier and easier. But this is kind of like the validation point for it. Like I think everybody's worry before was just kind of like it was like if you didn't accept PayPal on your SaaS app, your app just wouldn't get as many transactions. And
Yeah,
I
that's a
think
good
this
point.
was the same thought. Everyone was just kind of like, if I don't accept debit card and credit cards, our crypto based app or Web3 based app in some way is not going to get people to sign up because the barrier to entry is so hard. But I think this breaks it in so many ways and shows that getting stable coins is relatively easy these days and transferring them has gotten much clearer and 10,000 people did it like in the snap of a finger. So it's a really big validation point for not only Farcaster but also for this like future of stable coins as a payment method across the internet.
Yeah, totally. So one thing I'll say right now, not to get ahead of myself of a story that's coming up later, but Ross Ulbricht actually showed up in Bitcoin conference this week. He said how, mind you, if you don't know who Ross Ulbricht, then, too long, didn't read. He started the Silk Road when Bitcoin was worth like a couple of dollars, maybe even cents. He came back, after Donald Trump pardoned him. He spoke at Bitcoin conference. He said that back then in 2013 or right around that period, the only way you could get Bitcoin was through, one exchange or in person with someone who was like super duper familiar with that stuff, which back then was as rare as unicorns are. So point being is now he said that you go to any app, any crypto app, and there's always a button to buy Bitcoin. So in to your point, Leon, maybe we're going to start to see that now. Maybe because we're starting to see the convenience of having paying with crypto over paying with traditional debit and credit cards, that is going to go a long way. People are only going to start to integrate it in their applications or products as soon as it becomes easier to do. Kind of like with PayPal.
Yeah. Oh
Because
yeah,
now you can do
100%.
PayPal. Yeah, you can do PayPal with anything, for the most part, if people still like PayPal. So
Yeah. Well, like it or hate it, PayPal is a staple of the internet, and it is trusted. But
it is.
I I really see this as two validation points for Web3 and crypto as a whole. It's a validation for stablecoin payments, and then it's a validation for Farcaster, which is
Yep.
massive in both parts. But again, man, 10,000 people just jumping on that, like, I know everyone says like economies and scale, not every business has to be 500 million people, overnight. 10,000 people paying $120 a year with, almost no overhead on that, like, is huge. And then also, you talk about credit card fees.
Hmm.
There's bills working through Congress right now to strip away credit card rewards and all of that. Like,
Yep.
the world might be shifting away from this traditional finance system and really embracing stable coins more and more. And I think I said it in Toronto that I didn't quite understand stable coins,
Yep.
but after hearing like them talk about it, consensus and everything, it's like the back end upgrade for a system that still uses FTP files to
Yep.
tell when transfers happen in certain very specific banks. Like, it makes a lot more sense to me, where it's like a digital transformation for a banking system that was largely built in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, so a lot of our financial systems are outdated, which is where Bitcoin and crypto comes in. So one more thing I want to highlight in this thread here is why does it cost so much with cards? Um, Credit card fees are about 2.9%, transaction fees are 30 cents per item, and chargebacks are typically 0.6%. Card networks return half of these users as card benefits and pocket the rest as fees. So PayPal, Visa, they're like giant monopolies in the fintech space because they keep so much from every little transaction that we make, which I don't know. I can't give you a
Well, I
number of
guess
how much money we spent, but
I guess it's
it's a
what? It's
lot.
American Express,
Also,
Discover,
American Express, yeah.
Visa, and MasterCard. Those are the four processor like parts to that. And that's who,
Yeah.
like really benefit off of it. Like,
Yeah.
whereas in this system, who really benefits is just the end company and then the user, because the user knows, like, I'm not paying, just some credit card fees. Like, it's become more prevalent to see little signs saying, cash discounts, or there's a credit card fee added on. Like, imagine if your card just was stable coins. I'm not sure, especially with like traditional finance and Web3 kind of clashing. I'm not sure if MasterCard and Visa, which is really a duopoly in the end, and
Right.
Amex and Discover will let the stable coins not have some sort of like fee structure built in. Like, I think over time they're really gonna put something in place.
I agree. So good points here, Leon. So the next thing that I want to talk about is this is from Farcaster official Twitter account. And it says pay $120, get $600. So if you think, you're just so one thing I didn't mention is as far as the benefits of subscribing, you compare that to Twitter. Twitter really just gives you more visibility in the platform. So, you get a verification badge. You your posts, I think, get more visible in the algorithm. You will appear, your name, your account will appear more on the search for people who are of relevance to you. But for Farcaster, there's really not a lot of pros. there's also not there doesn't appear to be like a page on their platform that tells you this is what you're getting. In fact, a lot
So
of the benefits go to the creators, to people who are on the platform.
yeah, so
So in this
I have a
case,
quick list of it. Um,
oh great.
so you get features such as 10,000 character cast, the ability to upload 4 images per post, and then
Okay.
that revenue actually goes to all earnings from pro subscriptions are funneled into Farcaster's Creator Rewards program, which distributes 25,000 USDC weekly to top content creators, and then you get a commemorative NFT. Uh, and that limited edition NFT, like it doesn't confer additional rights or anything, but there's a lot of speculation around potential future value. Um,
Yep.
so
There's always speculation with these, which could be a both good or a bad thing depending on who you're asking. But I mean, I guess there are some benefits as far as having, the subscription. You do get, I guess, some sort of clout just by having that pro badge. But aside from that, it's not like you're getting pushed more visibility or growth within the algorithm. They don't announce that, they don't highlight that. So that's probably the only issue I would have with subscribing because, if I'm paying for something, I would like to at least increase my visibility with people on the social platform. But I mean, that's not a bad thing either because at least with Farcaster, they had an airdrop for 600 tokens, it looks like, or 200,000 pro coins, which seems to be the Farcaster token that is only given to, people who are part of the subscription, or at least the first 10,000 people. So more on this. This is actually Farcaster. This is the UI, the app that is Farcaster. May look a lot similar to Twitter if you look at it. So this post here highlights that introducing the Procoin, the community-led governance token for Farcaster Pro users. All 10,000 NFT holders are eligible for an airdrop. So right there, if you have that NFT, which is only given to you if you were one of the first 10,000, you automatically had the value to, be a recipient in this airdrop. The token will be untransferable until 500 pro users claim. In order to get the mandate as a community token, we need broad support. To claim, quotecast this post with a text ratifying Procoin governance. All 10,000 NFT holders are eligible, but the first 500 claimers will receive 5 times the allocation. So, kind of weird logistics here happening, not very clear, but they're trying their best to make some sort of hierarchy for true holders, true believers of said I guess Farcaster in this case. So, what do you think, Leon?
I we'll see. Most of the value and the most of my understanding right now of it is really just like the stable coin and that this is a huge win for this social I'm blanking on the word for it, but
The social network Farcaster?
yeah, but the social protocol,
Okay, yeah.
like we've talked about DeSo, we've built stuff on DeSo, but this is like a very good validation point for Farcaster in the in the social protocols. Like it's
Yep.
just a huge thing for them. Outside of that, the rest of this, like these drops in values and all of that, like I think it's hard to say. Like people will pay $120 a year just for a badge. Like in some
Yep.
places, like I've seen it on Tumblr. You can get a verified badge for like $80 a year or something. So people just do it sometimes. People spend a
Yep.
ton of money on Fortnite skins. Like,
Yep. Just cosmetics.
there's yeah, like there's no play to win. And to some regard, I like that you don't get a boost in the social feed by paying. Like
Okay.
I
Like it
think that
doesn't
there's
feel
a
pay to win-ish.
fairness to, yeah, it's like I don't mind pay to win to some extent, but
Makes sense.
like also I understand it. It's like a way to filter for bots and all of that. Like we'll have to see how Farcaster does. Like they don't have those scales where moderation and those problems are a thing yet.
Yep, that's a good point. So more on this Procoin, and this will be the last talking point for this story. So Procoin, if you go on Farcaster, you can look at tokens. So here's the Pro token, and what's really neat is you can have like a widget access to your own wallet. So here on the bottom right, and I don't know if you can see it on my screen when I'm sharing, but
Yeah.
Procoin, it's about a penny or 0.001, so about a tenth of a penny. And this is the performance for the last day, but in all time that it's been released, it's been going down by 21%. So I mean, it's a relatively new token. We would see what happens. Give it a week, maybe give it some time and see where it is. But I wouldn't be surprised if the token goes down immediately, because this is just people exchanging it or liquidating their token. So this is very common. We'll see what happens with Procoin. We'll see what happens with Farcaster. But I'm very bullish on Farcaster because the Coinbase team seems to be very vocal about it. When I say the Coinbase team, I mean Brian Armstrong himself, Jesse Polak, which is their Web3 head. He's part of the executive board as well, and he is more for on-chain governance, Web3 governance. And then, the whole team just seems to be doing a lot of PR for them, which seems to be working out for them.
Yeah.
Great. So that's pretty much the end for Farcaster. So the next thing that I want to talk about here is Sui. So if you guys were affected by the Sui, hack, which happened on one of their apps, I actually found a good video that kind of goes over that at a high level. I don't use Sui as much, so that's why I'm not able to talk much about it. But I do keep track on all these things. Sui, it's like its own layer one, and it seems to trying to do like the whole Solana thing, Solana and Ethereum thing, where you can build apps on it. You can, build things with this token, with this blockchain. So I found this video on TikTok, and this is from Crypto Wendy O. She's a pretty big streamer. Yeah, she's pretty active on YouTube and on Twitch. I think YouTube actually. So here she talks about the video. She talks about the token being hacked on her video.
Is allegedly hacked. If you are holding Sui, make sure to watch this entire video. Like and drop me a comment with your thoughts. Sui is a very well-known, popular blockchain. And currently number 11 on CoinMarketCap. It's basically a really good competitor of Solana and Ethereum, layer one. According to Cointelegraph and other sources on X, CETUS, main LP provider DEX on Sui allegedly hacked. 11 million in Sui drained from Sui/USDC pool, with most tokens down 75% plus. Those are empty. Other sources are saying that the amount that was hacked was about $200 million. So please note, this is not Sui. These are projects built on Sui that were using this liquidity pool. Easy from Binance is saying that they're there to help Sui. Other sources say that it was Sui's Foundation treasury that was attacked, but no actual users were attacked. However, there's a lot of chatter about people saying that their portfolios have completely dropped, that are holding different Sui projects. The Sui price is fine right now. I'll have more for you later on.
So that's pretty much it as far as her coverage. Key points to take away: it was not the users directly who were affected, but the liquidity pool, which does have the earnings of these users. So it looks like their earnings were affected, meaning the token dropped. The app that was hacked is called CETUS Protocol. What's actually a post about them came out just this week saying that it will actually be able to refund the affected liquidity pool that had the user funds. CETUS Protocol to refund 100% of the hacked user funds following the Sui community vote. So they do have like a form of governance on their ecosystem, which if people vote, things can happen to the whole ecosystem that affects every user. So on this other story, Sui Foundation is providing CETUS with a secured loan as part of the plan to quickly compensate user losses in full. What's interesting is it doesn't look like individual users were affected, but rather the liquidity pool. So I'm guessing that's where most of the funds would be allocated to. So Sui Foundation was actually the ones who provided the loan to CETUS Protocol, which is what's causing the whole network to be affected. However, the CETUS team will use these loans to proceed together with the assets from the treasury to cover losses from the stolen funds that have been bridged out of the Sui network. This loan will allow CETUS to cover losses beyond the CETUS, I think that's how I'm pronouncing it, CETUS could fund on their own. These funds apply only to cover the bridged assets and are separate from the frozen funds subject to the on-chain community vote. These are extraordinary measures taken to protect the Sui community. Taken together with the on-chain community vote proposal, a full recovery is possible. Sui Foundation stands strong in efforts to support its members. So the reason why we want to highlight it too is because this is pretty rare. This doesn't really happen on DeFi protocols, on Web3 ecosystems as a whole. And I think I think Sui recognizes that because, I mean, first of all, I don't think we've had a massive issue like this happen on Ethereum or Solana before. I think Solana maybe it's just, mind you, Sui is a VC-backed blockchain, so it is pretty centralized, despite the claims for it to be decentralized. But, if they're able to somehow help their users and make them happy, then I think, that's something that other ecosystems should do as well. Because, again, this just doesn't happen very often. Do you have like an idea of this happening to any other blockchains, Leon, as far as I know? Or as far as you know?
I've seen and heard of like smaller set stuff, like,
Right?
but nothing that pops into mind, any other place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this happened, about a week ago. Were you going to say something? Sorry.
No, I'm just trying to think. I feel like it's had to have happened in other places. Well, there was that here I just asked ChatGPT.
Okay.
So this looks like it has happened. Poly Network 2021,
Oh, with like
Ronin
Polygon?
Brit the Ronin, yeah,
It's for
Wormhole.
gaming.
Yeah, the Axie Infinity game. Wormhole. I remember Wormhole.
Well, I remember
Um
actually as well.
Yeah, I guess I remember it as Axie Infinity game versus the Ronin Network. Safe Moon, that was a really, really recent one. They
SafeMoon
took
was a scam, however. So, you know,
but scam. What is this one comparatively? Like this was an actual hack.
based on what it looks like, someone just got access into the liquidity pool funds and just withdrew it, and that affected
Mm,
everyone's value and holdings on Sui, which, if you compare that to, I mean, I guess that's a very similar scenario that happened with Axie Infinity, which ever since
yeah.
that happened, Axie Infinity has had like a, all the traffic they would get has gone down comparatively. I remember that, so I should have mentioned that.
Yeah, and then the last one was Nomad Bridge, which it was that misconfigured smart contract. I remember that one, where
Okay.
it resulted like multiple actors drained the funds, and that was like $200 million. So I guess this is a pretty common thing, um, in these liquidity pools, and then also just these smart contract flaws. Like,
Yes.
um,
Smart contracts, yes.
yeah, and I think most of them are private key compromises where people just like
Hmm.
the private keys controlling the liquidity pool or just like the part, and then also I know a lot of times the bridge vulnerabilities when they're across chains, they're often targeted due to the transfers on them.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact, these kind of hacks happen all the time, but as far as liquidity pools, I wasn't sure how common it was. I know smart contracts too do tend to have their own flaws as well because they're programmable. So, anyone who may have nefarious thoughts about, withdrawing people's funds, I mean, you can always program, smart contracts to do that. If you guys remember, for instance, in the 2020 times, 2021, 2022, MetaMask, one thing that would happen is um, they would send you phishing sites. I mean, ever since then,
Yeah.
MetaMask released some sort of, safeguard, I guess, for lack of a better word, that tells you, hey, this is a phishing site. But before that, phishing sites existed, and the way you would get your money withdrawn is through a smart contract because you would log in, and guess what? You log in, you give it your recovery phase, and then that's where the smart contract would activate or would trigger, making it so any holdings you had, which were mainly on Ethereum, they would get withdrawn and sent to another wallet without your permission. So
It's the
that's
wild,
one
wild
example.
west.
It very much still is. Or I mean, I feel it's improved over time. So we're hopefully going to see this continue to happen. Like as far as improvements, making it more secure, especially now that in the U.S. in the very least, it's getting its much needed, legislation or representation to help protect both consumers and businesses. So that's pretty much what I have to say. And with that, I think that's as far as everything we have to cover with Sui Coin. Do you have anything else, Leon?
No, no, I've got to like understand that a little bit more, but
Totally.
um, I've got a little better understanding now.
Yeah. So this is probably my favorite story to cover today. It's called it's the overview on what happened on Bitcoin conference. So if you weren't there on Bitcoin conference, this is kind of like us going over everything that happened. But if you were there, we would love to hear your thoughts on the comments and just let us know how it was for you, the conference. So we couldn't go this year because we went to consensus, but we're actually hoping we can go next year to Bitcoin conference and maybe, talk to anyone who might be in the space. So first thing I want to cover is something that seemed to be a trend, but not only in the Bitcoin conference, but also in consensus, which is U.S. officials, industry giants signaling turning point for Bitcoin adoption. Even though in consensus it was more like a general conference for crypto as a whole, like the crypto industry, there were a lot of mentions for Bitcoin as well. And here it looks like it being the Bitcoin conference, there were more conversations had about how Bitcoin is going to be adopted, and we'll cover everything here in a moment. But one thing I want to talk about this article is there were about 30,000 attendees, 300 exhibitors, and a packed up line of speakers. The gathering has blended high finance, bold policy proposals, and Bitcoin's evolving culture cloud. So pretty high attendance. The speakers were also pretty big. I'm gonna have to pull out here in a moment the list of speakers because I don't have it with me on hand. But anyways, some of the speakers by names, there was Michael Saylor, Howard Lutnick, Caitlin Long, Arthur Hayes, and the Winklevoss twins, alongside growing political star power. Not to mention there was also JD Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy,
Yeah,
and
David Sachs was there too, the crypto czar.
yes, David Sachs. I think those were the main political figures who were there. There was also a senator who was there, but I forgot her name. So Michael Saylor from Strategy, formerly MicroStrategy, he talks about there being an on-chain proof of reserves for corporate Bitcoin holdings. So kind of like having like an auditable form of viewing how much Bitcoin you have for any entity. I'm guessing that's what he means by proof of reserve. But here's what he says more. Pressed by a reporter, Saylor responded simply, no, adding that making wallet addresses public creates unnecessary security risks. No institutional grade or enterprise security analyst would think it's a good idea to publish all of the wallet addresses, such that you could be traced back and forth. The comment triggered an immediate debate across social media, reigniting long-standing concerns about transparency versus operational security. And I also do have some comments about that because I think what made Bitcoin and crypto amazing, just favored across everything was how transparent it is. And I think, as the landscape changes over the next few years, there's going to be more of these kind of topics because when you have a security issue, this could certainly create security issues when there's transparency. I've talked to some investors in San Antonio when we've gone pitching for social market. And whenever I talk to them about Bitcoin, one thing, mind you, San Antonio, they're not the most proficient when it comes to crypto, but people would tell me that crypto is really good for laundering money. It's really good for doing cyber crimes because that money is easy, it's untraceable, you name it. But what I think makes it traceable is the fact that you can see what the wallets are, and you can actually trace it, as a matter of fact, with the blockchain explorer. So with Bitcoin, for instance, I forget what the name of the website is, but you can do a blockchain explore for it. You can look at a wallet and you can see where all the historical, transactions are. That's what, I mean, it's a ledger effectively, and that's what blockchains are. So I think at
Yeah.
least, you know, I think at least, there needs to be some sort of legislation for this that I really hope, if you ask me, that they keep this as transparent as they can, because I think blockchain is going to change fundamentally in a bad way if they remove that transparency from everyone.
I I I get it though. The operational security OPSEC is a key importance to that. Just look at Tesla, like $1.2 billion of crypto. Like there's probably a bunch of people trying to get that money in some capacity. And the
Yep.
money spent protecting that's probably a lot. So I get it, but also I forget who said it at consensus. Maybe it was Eric Trump that, like just imagine what they're doing with regular dollars, like untraceable
Yep.
currency versus a digital currency that's pretty traceable if you've got a forensic team on it. Uh,
It is.
I get the concern for security. There's
Yeah.
probably a middle ground at some point because these are publicly traded companies. They're going to have to report, you know, how much crypto that they've got. Like they're going to be reporting it on the books. Maybe they start hiding it in the books. Like often that starts to happen. You see it with Apple where they're hiding like AirPod sales with like other headphones. I could see, doing that, but those reserves and the proof of it is kind of interesting. It's a transparency, but most companies are scared to be fully transparent because investors and all of that.
That's a good point. But what if the companies that start having an allocated reserve for Bitcoin are private owned or private equity? Do you think there will still be some form of transparency here?
If they're private, they can do whatever they want.
Right. And
Like
I think that's concerning. But
it can be,
I don't
but
know.
again, they're a private company. The government shouldn't come in and tell them that they have to, show proof of reserves. There shouldn't be rules on that for private companies. I understand publicly traded companies, but if
Right.
a private company doesn't want to disclose that they bought $1 billion in crypto, I don't think they should have to.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I don't like government overreach if you ask me, but I think, when it comes to upholding the core values of crypto, there needs to be a reservation for that. Because when you're here upgrading the protocol at the protocol level, which is at the code level, making it so it's no longer transparent, I think that can cause issues down the road. And I'm not here trying
Yeah,
to make it
I,
like a
I,
whole
I
issue.
get that. Like, don't change the protocol.
Yep.
Don't make it less transparent. But if somebody sets up a wallet and they don't know that it's a $1 billion private company, like there's no reason to disclose who that is.
Right. And it makes sense. But anyways, more on what was actually talked about here on the crypto conference. So that was from Michael Saylor, proof of reserve, which, very mixed feelings. Next one was US may start buying Bitcoin, says David Sachs. In one of the most surprising developments, crypto czar David Sachs hinted that the US government may be exploring Bitcoin purchases. Sachs said that the discussions are underway at the Treasury and Commerce Department to acquire Bitcoin without increasing taxes or debt. The Treasury and Commerce Departments are exploring budget neutral ways to acquire Bitcoin without raising taxes or debt. Using tariff revenue is one option under consideration, Sachs said. So again, I think it's interesting. I think, it's not too different than having a gold reserve, although Bitcoin is going to be worth more than gold at some point. I wouldn't be surprised. I think, this
Especially since
is,
they can make gold from lead now.
is that true? I
Yeah,
know they're trying to,
CERN did it. They were able to
CERN?
do it in small amounts, but CERN was able to turn lead into gold. All the alchemists back in the day are probably rolling in their grave like, ah, they did it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I think, asteroids in the space, maybe not far from us, could have tons of gold and platinum and diamond. So there's always going to be there's a very finite amount of Bitcoin. So that alone, makes it so it's worth more than gold, in my
Well,
opinion.
my challenge to that is,
Mhm.
what about super quantum computers? Quantum computers could disrupt Bitcoin mining completely. That's been the new concern.
Yes. So I don't think
There's
they
there's
mentioned that
always
here.
a risk to anything of value and that has a limited quantity that something comes along and disrupts it. So
Yep.
just like gold, like diamonds, real diamond costs over the past like 5, 10 years have been decreasing because you can manufacture diamonds now. They're still
True.
valuable, but they're more common in lab made ones.
Yep.
Gold at some point, maybe we're 50 years away from us actually making gold in volume. Uh, but it's going to go
Yep.
down in value a little bit. And same thing, quantum computers could just wipe out Bitcoin.
Yeah. So I know something we didn't get to cover this week, but there's still a lot of concerns or a lot of FUD happening in that, and maybe once we have more concrete news or more concrete articles written about it, that's when we can cover it. But for the time being, there's still a lot of speculation on that, so maybe we'll have a story for you in the next few weeks. But in any case, going back to the conference, you can read more of the talking points here. We'll share this link on the article on the bio. Now, as far as some of the fun stuff here, so we were able to get actual footage of what happened in the Bitcoin conference. So on stage right now we have both Trump twins, not twins, but the Trump children. It's Eric and Junior.
One more question, and the next ones I'm going to throw it to these guys over here, the American Bitcoin team. Well, like I said, I've been talking with everybody in the conference, and something that you revealed in Bitcoin Mina Abu Dhabi, Eric, on your speech is that you've known Michael Saylor, both of you, for 20 years, and he in fact helped kind of talk to you about Bitcoin and get you to realize the value prop. Now, Michael Saylor, he's always so tactful. He never likes to reveal personal conversations with him and the Trump family. Could you tell us what Michael?
It's actually fucking packed right now. I think it's a much bigger stage than the one at Consensus. So just a
Oh yeah.
little note there.
Saylor said to you that finally got you thinking, maybe there is value there?
So Michael's been a great friend of mine. And by the way, everybody's giving him a round of applause because he's great, truly one of the greatest. Bitcoin is so fortunate.
Yeah, I think this audio was the audio was changed a little because Trump sounds a little bit more high pitched there. Yeah, so pack room, everyone went, and it makes sense when it was in Consensus. I think the stage was a lot smaller, maybe about a third the size of what you saw in that video if you can kind of gauge it. But it looks like the American Bitcoin team was also there on stage right next to Junior. And yeah, I mean, this is very bullish. Uh, Everybody went to consent to the Bitcoin conference instead of Consensus. So I think most of where the big influencers, most of the traction is going to be in conference in the Bitcoin conference. Just a little side note there.
Yeah, bigger speakers too than consensus in many ways. Like that's it's a different, much bigger venue. There's just a lot more to it, and I think there's free tickets. Like there's just a lot more going on there. Whereas consensus is a company owned one. It's a different type of conference.
I agree. So so you heard Eric Trump speak a little bit there. Now this is Vivek Ramaswamy. This is a 30-second video, so gonna cover it a little bit. A very important point from Vivek Ramaswamy at Bitcoin 2025. Bitcoin should be included in school curriculums as part of financial literacy programs. Now, I think that's a very interesting topic to talk about because, I mean, that can open a whole can of worms about just how financially educated people are here in the US. If you're here in the US, you can probably understand. They didn't teach us much about taxes, about, filing for taxes, having financial literacy. They kind of just teach you a lot of things that could help you in college, but not fully in life. So, anyways, this is what Vivek had to say.
In the game. So what can a governor do to help lead the way to that vision where every kid is able to participate in the magic of American capitalism and compounding, to not be spiteful towards the successful by being successful instead. One of the things I will do is I will lead Ohio to be the first and top state in the country to integrate financial literacy into our public education that includes the power of compounding, including education about Bitcoin as an asset class that every young person ought to be aware of as they make those financial decisions. To cultivate an education system. It is part.
Yeah. So if you had asked me what compound was, what compound interest, what compounding is when I was in high school, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you. But, we've come a long way ever since. And I think children and, young adults should learn about this even in college because it's an essential skill to have in this day and age. So here's another thing I want to cover. So this is from Tiffany Fong, Twitter's very favorite shit poster. So I don't know about you, Leon, but do you think she's dating the guy who created MySpace, Tom? I see them everywhere on her social feed here where they're together and they're pretty close. But yeah,
I don't know what Tom does anymore other than like photographs and runs around the world. That'd be an interesting dynamic there, but kind of cool. Like, what a great like conversation starter. Hey, this is my boyfriend. He was the founder of oh, you're probably already friends with him on MySpace. Like, oh, that's such a
Right.
great combo.
yeah. We love Bitcoin, MySpace, Tom. That's what they talk about. She tries her best not to, be labeled as a crypto influencer just because she gained a lot of her recognition by interviewing Sam Bankman-Fried with the whole FTX issue. But that's a separate story. So here she was pretty active on on social media, and her and MySpace Tom are together most of these photos. So that's where my thoughts are if they're dating, which I don't know if it's disclosed. Again, another photo here. They just take photos on Bitcoin conference. It looks like it was like an open room, and then there were like, little, for lack of a better word, little stations where they had like presentations and maybe some goodies that you can take that are part of the Bitcoin brand. There were also like parties, nightclubs there, which I know you and I went to a few for Consensus in Canada. There's more people here who showed up. She also got with Gemini. Gemini must have had a little station where they were giving
It
away
looks like
two.
more than a little.
Well, yeah, so they're actually giving away two Cybertrucks with the Gemini brand in it, and all you need to do is like sign up for the Bitcoin credit card. So I know we talked earlier, the first story with using credit cards and stuff. So Gemini actually gives you Bitcoin instead of points, which I think it's pretty interesting. Not financial advice. We're not paid to talk about Gemini, but I actually use Gemini, so I mean, I think it would be something for me to explore. In any case, she partnered with Gemini and she has her own referral link. So, go check it out if you're interested. And then again, here's Tiffany with MySpace Tom. And there was a photo where she was with one of the Winklevoss twins, I believe. I could be wrong, however. But anyways, I think that was pretty much as far as it goes.
Yeah. No, it looked like a great event. I want to hit up next year. But it looks like it made a lot of news and there was a lot of people that were important to crypto as a whole.
Yeah. So it was really packed. So next year we'll probably very likely go to Bitcoin Conference 2026. So we may have some footage for you there. In any case, so this is Tyler Winklevoss, his brother Cameron. Tyler and Cameron are, here with Donald Trump. They gave 1 million in Bitcoin, which is about 15.47 Bitcoin as of June in 2024. In any case, so Gemini, their brand is kind of everywhere, and they're doing a lot. They were also
spending a ton of money.
Dude, yeah, they're just burning cash. I mean, they're rich, so I mean, even before I don't know how many of you are familiar with the story of the Winklevoss twins, but they were actually pretty involved with Facebook when Facebook was in its inception back in 2005, I believe. So, and even before then, they were rich. So, they were in Harvard. in any case, you can follow Tyler or Cameron on Twitter, and here they kind of just talk about everything that happened on the Bitcoin conference as well. The next big talking point that I want to talk about is with Ross Ulbricht, who had like a 30-minute speech or session on stage. So I was able to find this clip where it kind of just gives you the entire, his entire speech. So I'll play here a couple of segments just so you can kind of get an idea, but we'll leave the entire clip on the description as well for you to look at. So here, the post talks about, here's the full Ross Ulbricht speech for the Bitcoin conference last night, in case you missed it. He delivered a great talking point, or great talk, making salient points that really hit home. Freedom, decentralization, unity. And they tag him. So that's him coming on stage. Everyone is cheering. Huge crowd, as you may have already gauged. So he goes on to talk about, again, freedom, decentralization, and unity. Gonna skip to a couple of segments here.
Free because of you. You made this moment possible. Can you feel that? Let that sink in. You did.
Yep, so everyone who voted for Trump, and I don't know, because of Trump, he's pretty much free. So he does go on to talk about that at some point here. We don't have, don't want to go over all of this video here, but again, we'll leave the link in the description below. He kind of talks about how, again, Bitcoin was really hard to get access to back in the day, but now you can buy it almost anywhere. And because of Trump, he's now free, and he's excited to be back. He's no longer in jail. So yeah, go check out his video. We'll leave it down in the description. But as far as things go, that's pretty much everything we wanted to talk about for today.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to a pool and check out some more Farcaster, and then we'll see everybody next week.
Yeah, thanks everyone.